Hello, guys. I am Marshall Bircher, and before we get started in my little automated training here, I want to let you know you can reach out to me at 208-918-0907 with any questions you have, or you can email me at experts@freetheself.com. Guys, I do this because I'm very serious about helping you break free of your codependency and rediscover happiness, love, and confidence again in your life, just like I have, and just like hundreds of the clients that I have worked with have discovered for themselves. So tonight's training, we're going to go into how we heal codependency and the actual reality that of what codependency is, because there's a lot of confusion out there and a lot of definitions, but I think my definition is the one you want to follow because it's the one that actually creates results when you address codependency through that lens. So I am Marshall Bircher. I am a mentor in healing trauma and codependency permanently. I've been at this for 11 years. I am a survivor myself. So I recovered from like 3 decades of codependency, neglect, abandonment, and trauma. Sexual trauma, emotional trauma, and spiritual religious trauma specifically. So again, in tonight's training, I'm going to show you the truth about codependency and how to actually discover happiness, love, and confidence again. I'm giving you the 4-step formula that I give all my clients, that I give my students on how to heal. Because there are just 4 simple steps you've got to go through to heal this. After you understand what the real nature of codependency is, this makes a lot more sense. It creates a lot more confidence in you because, frankly, you're not your codependency. All right. So you may not know me, so let's get acquainted a bit. I'm a survivor, just like you, just like I mentioned a moment ago. I'm also a passionate introvert, so doing this kind of thing is definitely a reach outside that comfort zone. I'm also into chocolate cubes. I really like Ghirardelli dark chocolate with the little sea salt caramel. Good stuff. I'm a father of 2 kiddos. That's my daughter and my son there, Shaylee and Truman. I studied and trained in shamanic healing and relationship therapy for a total of 4 years. So I've got credentials behind me. I'm basically what some would say a life coach, but I call myself a mentor because that's really what I'm doing. I'm guiding you through a very structured process that gives you results. Okay. I broke free from my internalized self-hate, severe abandonment, and chronic emotional neglect, what's called internalized loneliness, and also love addiction. So I've been down the road on this a bit. I broke free of these using the 4 steps I'm going to be teaching you guys here in just a moment. So you just as a tidbit, if you don't have a notebook out, get one. Get one out and get a pen and take notes, because this is what's going to, you're going to have ahas during this. You're going to have realizations during this. So let's, get those out and let's do this. I also healed from trauma in myself and in others. Okay. So, and I'm talking real trauma. My mother died when I was 10. There was an abandonment there. Sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and especially the more complex stuff like complex PTSD with chronic emotional neglect, with bullying at school, with not having much of a social, belonging, things like that. So we can do this. If you face these things, you have hope. We can get you through it. All right. Now, I do what I do for some very specific reasons. That's my picture. That was taken in 1997, just before I graduated from high school. I was 19 in that picture. And just a few months after that, I attempted suicide. Okay? And I do what I do because suicide is not the answer. We don't have to escape our pain. We can resolve it. We don't have to suffer with it. We can be free of it. Pain doesn't have to last, guys. We're not here to tolerate it. We're not here to cope with it. We're not here to learn lessons from it. We're here to get closure on it and move on and create a happiness for ourselves. Now, trauma is a moment. It's not the definition of our life. It's not the definition of our future. When we understand it that way and then we resolve it, then it's out of the way and we can get back into restorative, healthy, fun, playful, fulfilling, exciting experiences in our life, with our relationships, with jobs, with businesses, with our hobbies, with the things we want to do, with the time we have here. It's also because codependency is about survival. It's not a flaw. It's not an identity. It's literally about survival. And ultimately, it's because you are worth knowing, loving, and keeping. Okay. Now, I think it's important to build credibility because I don't think you should automatically trust me. And if you do, I might like you to be skeptical because skepticism gives you the ability to make rational decisions and gives you the chance to be really in tune with you. Okay. So credibility is found in the results. It's not found in a degree. It's not found in a certification. It's found in what the mentor, the coach, the therapist can produce for you. Okay. And so here's some credibility. I've got Neil. Neil's been in my program for about 6 months at this point, and he's experienced major shifts in his emotions. He has a natural confidence. You can see it all right there. He's just telling you right there. The circled one, she wanted to be anonymous, but I mean, this program accompanied with the closure technique has produced more change in ahas in 1 month than years of talk therapy. Boom. Now, Sonia Miller, she's a professional coach. She's talking about how my processes that I've taught her have got to the core of how she's been feeling, about her worth, about her relationships, about what those things mean to her, about her role in life. And she's done that in 5 weeks, guys. 5 weeks. Got a shout out from another anonymous person. People like to be anonymous because, I think you get it because you're dealing with narcissists, you're dealing with toxic people. They want to come find data on you. So I anonymize a lot of things because that's what they want. She's grateful that she's able to experience support and experience that she can succeed at breaking through the situation she's dealing with in her life. I got Cynthia, and she says it right there. His tools work more effective than any therapist I've been to. Guys, results matter because that's where the credibility comes from. Okay. So I hope you'll give me the next 15 to 20-ish minutes. I'm going to move through this quick. So make sure you take notes. Give me that time. And I guarantee you're going to walk away from this, 1, knowing how to heal, 2, a very clear and compassionate understanding about why you have codependency. It's not because of who you are. It's because of what you've gone through. All right. So ultimately, I have found this truth in our lives. This is what I consistently come back to working with clients over the last 11 years is this, and also with myself here. We are worth knowing, we are worth loving, and we are worth keeping. These are the 3 things we have a right to in relationships, and that we are a privilege. If anything, you take anything from this class today, guys, from this training, is that you are a privilege. You deserve to be cherished. You deserve to be known. You deserve to be loved and kept for who you are. Not what you do, not what you look like, not what you own, but for your existence, for the person that you are. Okay? All right. Now, all that stands between you and this being your reality is the false conclusions you've bought into about yourself due to the pain of your past. Okay, I call this emotional association. So one of my emotional associations was, hey, Marshall, you're a weird little boy. Girls don't like you. And so I associated shame with myself when I referenced girls in my mind, like, oh, she might like me. Shame would show up. Okay, this was a false conclusion I bought into because of rejection and criticism I received from some girls. Right? Also combined with some abuse from other females in my life. Once I broke that false conclusion, I began to see a different reality, and I began to experience healthy, safe friendships and relationships and experiences with women. And guess what, guys? That only happened. I'm 41 now. That started happening when I was 34. So most of my life, I have not trusted that anybody would really care about me that way. So this is the power of having the right tools with the right processes. You suddenly start getting the results you've been aching for all your life because you are worthy of it. There's nothing that's made you unworthy. Okay? We'll get into that. We'll get into why we're codependent here in just a second. So ultimately, if you release the conclusion you're living on, that you think is real, you'll actually be able to discover the truth of you, okay? That's what I want you to think about in this. This is a fundamental of how I teach, how I work, is that we release conclusions and we discover reality. And always works to our benefit because we quickly find out that we really are worth knowing, loving, and keeping. All right. So here's a truth I want you to start out here. And this is where we get into codependency. Truth number one, codependency is not what you have been taught. Okay? If you've been reading all those self-help books, if you have been in the Narc Anonymous or Codependence Anonymous, CODA, or in Al-Anon or anything like that, or even in therapy, you've been taught some things that are bullshit. And I swear, so here we go. That's just me. And number one, codependency is not a disease you're going to cope with. It's simply not. And you'll understand why in just a second, but it's not. Okay, truth number one, it's not a disease. It's not a flaw in your nature. It's not because of who you are, not because you're unworthy or you desperately need other people. Nope. It's not part of your identity. It's not part of your nature. Okay? It's a programmed component of your nature, but it's not genuinely who you are. It's not how love actually works. We do not have to give ourselves up for other people to be loved. We're not a burden. Our feelings aren't a burden. Our love isn't disgusting or wrong. We're not unworthy of being loved. We're not, we are worthy of being kept. We are worthy of being seen. Love is a reciprocal experience where respect and kindness and care about who we are is involved rather than just, appreciating us for what we do. Codependency is also not just the way things are. It's not just how you are. It's not a default. Now, before I teach you what codependency actually is, we need to discuss what the brain does with a danger. Okay, so here's where we get into some twists here. Okay, so your brain on fear. In your brain, you have a little organ. It's called the amygdala. Now, you put your fingers right above your ears, right about here. Your fingers are pointing at your amygdala. It's a little almond-shaped organ that sits on both sides. It's got two hemispheres, just like the brain. What it does is it regulates fear. It regulates how the brain is going to respond to something it perceives as a danger or threat, right? So the amygdala experiences something it thinks is a threat. What it does is it redirects energy and blood flow from the prefrontal cortex, the neocortex here, to the base brain, the brainstem, the limbic system, the primal brain, and then it works to assess what it can do with this threat. At this time, your body becomes flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. So that's when your heart rate, jumps. That's when you start to feel tense or anxious. Your breathing becomes shallow and your thinking becomes narrowed because your brain's mode is now in trying to assess the threat and determine what to do with it. Now, your brain has four options with fear. It's got fight, it's got flee, it's got freeze, and it's got fawn. So your brain on fight, our little chihuahua there, the brain determines, the brain's going to choose fight when it determines it can neutralize or kill a threat. Okay? So this kicks in the aggression and strength, and we get really aggressive. We're going to go out there, we're going to hit it, we're going to pound on it, we're going to try to take it out. This typically works out that all that cortisol and adrenaline in our body starts to work itself out, gets burned out, we get exhausted. We actually get closure with that because the body's able to reach a new normal, return back to its baseline of safety. And this typically shows up as confrontation, conflict, yelling, being physical, punching bags, like you need to get the anger out, stomping your feet, things like that. And oftentimes it can be very irrational, like the Chihuahua. The Chihuahua's really aggressive, right? It's going to get out there and try to kill us all. Yet it's a tiny dog. We could easily neutralize tiny dog, right? So while the brain may choose fight, it doesn't mean it's completely rational. It just means that it thinks it can defeat the threat. But if it can't defeat the threat, it's going to choose some other options. The next one would be fleeing. We're going to run away like that dude in the picture. We're going to get out of there. So if the brain determines it can escape or outrun the threat, it's going to run. And so swift action is chosen to get away. This also works out that rush of cortisol and adrenaline that's in our body. And it can help us regulate back to safety as long as the environment is secured. So that way, the threat isn't out there still. We're secure. We know that we are safe. This shows up as avoiding problems. Procrastination is actually running away from things, like moving and hoping the problem goes away, changing phone numbers, things like that. And also the urge to run. So that's a very, very natural, primitive response to danger, right? So if the brain can't run and the brain can't fight it, it's going to choose one of two other options, right? The brain might even choose to freeze. We got our fainting goat there. Just freezes, falls over, plays dead. So if the brain determines it can survive by playing dead, it will. It's just going to play dead like the goat. I'm dead. You don't need me anymore. This shows up as needless, no reaction, blank face, rigid, still, no feelings, no opinion, no breathing. Your body gets locked into an extremely tight and tense state. Your energy, all that energy that's been going on in your body gets stuck. It's like compressing a spring really tight and then just holding it there. You know, there's still energy in that spring. When you let it off, it's going to go boom, right? And so this also is what creates loops. This is where flashbacks happen. This is where nightmares happen. This is where we react to things with a lot of startle. This is where we overreact to situations that aren't at all actually related to the original trauma situation. And this is also where trauma is formed if we don't actually get the thaw out of the freeze. Okay? So the trauma is actually rooted in freeze. Now, if the brain can't run, it can't fight, and it can't freeze, maybe it will fawn. Okay? So the brain determines it can please a threat, can make itself attractive to the threat, so the threat will keep it. This shows up as the classic codependent behaviors of people-pleasing, of fixing, of rescuing, of controlling, of trying to prove ourselves, of enabling, and avoiding conflict. Okay? This also creates a pretty interesting chemical cocktail for us because our cortisol and our adrenaline become mixed with oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. They get mixed together, and this creates a symptom called trauma bonding, or also known as love addiction. This is where we feel affection for someone who's abusing us. Our brain tunes out the abuse and focuses on feeling good about that person so we can continue to keep them around so we can survive. That's fawning. This is where codependency actually comes from. We're also prevented from regulating back to our natural baseline of safety and relaxation so we can be who we are. Instead, we're stuck in a semi-state of freeze while we fawn. So this is traumatic to us. And this fundamentally shows up as those codependent behaviors. Okay? So this brings us to truth number 2. Codependency is the result of the fawn response. This is why it's not your identity. This is why it's not who you are. This is why it is not a disease. And this is why it's not a flaw in who you are. It's actually your brain going, I can survive this by making them like me. That's pretty brilliant, in my opinion. And it's a huge amount of brilliance, really, because of how attuned your brain becomes to that other person. That's pretty amazing, guys. All right. So your sense of survival was threatened enough times that your brain determined it needed to fawn in order to convince the threat, whether it was your parent or your spouse or best friend, that it needed that to keep it alive, it needed to be useful to that person. This is why we're codependent. Had nothing to do with a disease. Had nothing to do with who you are. Had nothing to do with your needs or your wants. It had to do with your survival. Okay? So, what are we trying to survive? What's the big threat we're running from here? What's the big threat we're fawning in order to avoid experiencing? I want you to think about that for a moment. What's the big threat for you? Okay? And when I've surveyed my clients and I've gone through the records and I've talked with people in my community, they all reference being one thing, one event. Okay? And they say it in different ways, but it all breaks down to this. And it's this. This is the big threat. Being discarded. We fear being thrown away. Our biggest fear is not being enough. So that they stop caring, They vanish, thus we don't exist anymore. They don't need us. Who are we without them? Being discarded. That's our biggest fear. That's what we're trying to mitigate or control by fawning. Okay, so what discard looks like? Lots of different ways, but you're too needy, you're too much, you're too little, you're not enough. You get that silent treatment. You get the comparison. Well, my ex-girlfriend wasn't that way. My mom's not that way. Being replaced quickly by another. So you guys break up, and 2 days later, he's got the love of his life, right? And he's on Facebook like, oh, I've never felt this before. Oh my God, this is amazing. And you're like, but you were just saying that to me. Like, you said that to me. You said the same thing to me. You're like, what is going on? You know? That's a big deal, guys. That's being discarded. Being ignored after meeting their demands. So you go out and you do what they ask you to do, and they don't give a shit. They're like, oh, well. Or they, even worse, they're like, you didn't do it enough. Or I changed my mind. Or, oh, that's not what I wanted. Or that's not what I meant. Get a little gaslighting in there. You only get attention or affection or interest from them when they want or need something. See this a lot with the sex dynamic, right? Sound familiar? And then they accuse you of being selfish because you speak up for yourself. This is what the discard looks like. They don't care about how you feel, right? They only care about what they want. And then they come back and they love bomb you, and they're like, hey, I love you. I'm so sorry. I'll do better. And then you buy into it, and then they devalue you by criticizing you again. You're too needy. You're too much. You're not enough. Why do you always need this? What do you think you're doing? You're really stupid. And then they give you that silent treatment, and they discard you again, and then they have a need, so they got to hoover you and take you back into that cycle. That's how discard works. This is how we get hooked on the narcissistic or toxic abusive person, right? So fundamentally, that's our biggest fear. That's the biggest threat we're experiencing, is because that we feel if we're discarded, we lose ourselves. So we respond to the threat of being discarded by fawning. We become whatever we thought they needed. And this is what our brains did with that conclusion. It maximized their emotions and needs over our own. So we're always asking, what do they need? How do they feel? How does this work for them? We tuned out our own voice for theirs. We replaced our voice with theirs. We linked love and pain together because we get a jolt of adrenaline and dopamine. Oxytocin, we think about them. It's scary, but we like them. So that's where the love addiction comes in, that trauma bonding. We built tolerance for abuse and neglect and emptiness. We're just avoiding it. We're just like, it's supposed to be this way. This is what you're supposed to do in relationships. This is the normal. No, it's not. We blame ourselves for their lack of love and respect because we think that if we love them enough, they'll love us back. They'll change. We think our love heals them. And that's actually built in the codependent fantasy. See, we mastered denial and created a fantasy about being rescued to keep us from facing the pain. And that is really what we're looking at. Because if I love them enough, then they'll love me and they'll take my pain away too. They'll make me feel whole. They'll finally appreciate everything I've ever done for them. And while they're out, cheating on you or spending the money on something they want or just ignoring your existence or demanding more from you, but you're like, a little more love might heal them. The love will heal them. My love can heal them. Nope, it cannot. Be really clear here. Your love is not here to heal anybody. You cannot heal them because the problem is always going to be them. It's in them. It's very important to understand this because they create their own problem. You didn't create it. Now, this affected us, this discard and this compensation for the discard, this response of fawning to the threat of discard has affected us in very specific ways, in 3 specific ways that you need to understand if you're actually going to heal your codependency, okay? Impact number 1 has to do with our identity. We abandon our identity. We abandon ourselves, okay? So we lose contact with our inner voice. We stop occupying our body, mind, and feelings. And this alters what's called a default mode network in the brain. The default mode, the brain has 2 modes, default mode and active mode. And default mode says, hey, We do all these things automatically. We feel this way automatically. We think this way automatically. We do this automatically. Default mode network is basically the automated side of our brain. And when we stop occupying our body, mind, and our feelings, the default mode network becomes programmed to discard our awareness of ourselves, and it becomes programmed with fear. This is why we have that constant anxiety. This is why we can't seem to escape it, because the default mode network is programmed to give us those feelings, thoughts, and sensations. Now, we also end up absorbing their expectations, judgments, likes, and dislikes as our own. We start to mimic them. We start to be a chameleon. We're trying to be what they want, because that's what fawning does, right? We think, hey, if I show up like they are, they'll like me more and they'll keep me. We associate ourselves emotionally with shame rather than love. This is very important. We are creating an emotional association with ourselves. So when we think about ourselves, when we reference ourselves, we have an emotional experience of shame rather than love. This is critical to our identity, because if we identify with shame as being our value, what I call the governing value, then we're going to govern our choices and our actions from that emotion. That's huge. This is why we get into the toxic relationship patterns. This is why we avoid accomplishing things we want. This is why we don't know what we want, because we're occupied by a false feeling, a feeling of shame. Now, we also ignore our thoughts and feelings, and our options, and our opinions, and our points of view. We become very narrowed into pleasing them because we feel we need to survive it. Now, guys, at some point, we actually did have to survive this, especially if your experience involves neglectful, abusive, narcissistic, unattentive parents. But they don't have to be narcissistic. This is triggered with neglect and a lack of attention, right? So we've been taught to do this. So it's not just something that it can happen in a significant relationship as well. But for a lot of us, this happened really young, and so it's become a normal. We don't really have an alternative to look at yet, right? All right, and then we discard and ignore our wants and needs because, they're a burden, they're selfish, they're a problem. Oh man, why do I have these things? Because it always upsets them, right? And then we rely on them for our sense of worth, value, and purpose so that we can be what they want us to be so we can survive, okay? So that's impact number one. Impact number two is it distorts connection. Emotional and physical connection with others and with ourselves becomes highly malignant and very deficient and very painful. So we exchange connection, being seen, being heard, being valued for who we are. We exchange it for control. We're going to control their feelings. We're going to regulate how they feel. We're going to regulate their behaviors. And hopefully they'll regulate ours, right? We stop needing, or we become needless. We try to be perfect. Because being needy is a huge insult to us. Oh, I'm a burden. I'm needy. But then when you start breaking into our needs because they need met, they're loud, then we're called selfish, right? We become emotionally orphaned. There's nobody there for us. There's nobody to give us emotional shelter, to connect with us, to nurture us, to protect us, to comfort us, to help us mend when we go through really difficult things in life. And we experience a deep sense of emotional isolation and loneliness. This turns into what's called internalized or pathological loneliness, or we feel emotionally utterly isolated from others, unloved and unwanted, unseen, invisible. We don't exist unless that other person is there, right? Yeah. And it's this internalized loneliness that drives us to not leave the relationship, even when we know it's toxic. This is one of the biggest unconscious or subconscious motivators there is. And you tie that in with love addiction, you're not going to leave. It's going to be very painful to leave. This is why you feel stuck. If you're like, man, I've tried to leave like 12 times, Marshall, and I haven't. This is why. This is exactly why. This is why you get that massive hit of dopamine and adrenaline and those good warm feelings when they message you after they've discarded you. You're going through a process called intermittent reinforcement. And this is what gets you hooked. And it's all because you have that internalized loneliness. You're not connected both with you or anybody else in a healthy and sustainable way. And it's not your fault. The fawning process to survive the threat of being discarded taught us to do this so that we could be whatever they needed us to be so we wouldn't get discarded. So this isn't a flaw in you. This is actually your brain's brilliance trying to help you survive love neglect, to survive emotional neglect and physical affection neglect and attention neglect, all of that, okay? We also end up craving and or avoiding connection. This is called anxious or avoidant attachment. We get really, really hooked on that. We also build a distrust in love and vulnerability and in trust. We don't think it's really reliable. We don't think it's safe. We think it's risky. It's dangerous. Yeah, we associate love with pain, love with abuse, love with emptiness. Yeah, that's not what real love is. Love is warm. It's attentive. It cares about how we feel. It respects our boundaries and who we are. You may not believe that right now, and that's okay. I didn't either until I went through my own healing. I discovered it for myself. You can have it too. You can have real love, not from the people you're with right now, especially if they're the abusers. They're not going to love you that way because love for them is about possession and control. It's about getting whatever they want, and you get to live with whatever is left. Okay? Now, connection is distorted in such a way that we feel like a burden. We feel like our existence is a burden, our needs are a burden, our feelings are a burden, our wants are a burden, our personality. I felt like who I was as a burden, unwanted. It was disgusting. Yeah. So connection with ourselves and with others becomes highly distorted because we control and fix and please them. And then we rely on them for us to feel good about ourselves. They regulate our sense of value and we regulate their sense of safety or whatever it is they want. They're typically their identity if they're a narcissist. Very important to understand because remember, the fawn response that is triggered by the threat of being discarded is what creates this distortion in connection, okay? And number 3, happiness is lost. Real happiness cannot be found anymore because we're oriented towards pleasing the other person. So life and relationship skills become arrested. They become very narrow and they become oriented towards satisfying the other individual. Communication becomes about pleasing and not about connecting, understanding, or disagreeing. Conflict is avoided, so you're not going to rock that boat. So it's no wonder you have huge anxiety about conflict or it scares you. That's because it risks the loss of that connection. It risks discard. And validly so, because you've rocked the boat and they've taken away that love. They have taken away that attention. They've taken away the affection. So you're not crazy. You're having an actual response to a very real threat in your life. Their feelings determine our feelings, so we regulate whatever they feel. That's that mimicking component. We starve for love, for validation, for attention, and for affection. These are all valid core needs that we have. There are 4 of the 10 core needs that we all have. And we're starving for them. We're not going to get them. We're going to have these breadcrumbs of love. That's one of my clients came up with that term. He's like, yeah, I'm at the table just eating moldy breadcrumbs while they're eating fresh food. And I'm happy about it? No, not anymore. So be careful there, you know. And love addiction and trauma bonding kick in with this. Again, that's a major component. We have that internalized loneliness I talked about just a moment ago. And we have that oxytocin, that dopamine, serotonin, plus adrenaline, cortisol hit where we are oriented, emotionally associated with our narcissistic or abusive person with love, but with dread too, right? We have both. That's because we're in trauma bond, okay? And then shame becomes a definition of our worth, not love. This is what happens with that fawn response. This is what happens when we try to avoid being discarded. It's a natural response. It's not your fault. Okay? Now, this results in a lifetime of emotional isolation from others and self. deep fear about love, intense craving for approval, love, and for them to make you feel whole. That's where the love addiction comes in. No boundaries. Why have a boundary? That upsets people, right? You lose yourself in relationships. Well, who am I now? You just become absorbed in it. Patterns of toxic or deficient relationships. So you're not getting needs, or you're avoiding getting your needs met. Perfectionism becomes your normal day to day. I mean, I'm totally perfectionistic. Probably noticed some errors in my class here in this training. That's deliberate. It breaks me free more of that perfectionism. We're always trying to fix ourselves, trying to be perfect, trying to be that idealized fantasy that we think we can be that would make them love us. We keep failing. And that just reinforces that sense of shame that we've associated with ourselves, because we think that if I made them feel better and if they liked me, I wouldn't have that shame. I'd be enough. And that's actually not true. Okay? So the big question is does this sound like you? Is this you? Because if it is, you're in the right place. Yes, then truth number 3 is especially for you. Truth number 3, you did not cause this to happen. You did not deserve this. You didn't earn it. And you could not prevent it. Okay? You didn't cause this because they're the ones threatening you, not you threatening them. They're the ones with the inability to actually love you for who you are. They're the ones with the problem. They're the ones with the deficiency. Not one you can fix. You didn't cause it, so you can't fix it. Okay? You didn't deserve this. Nobody earns abuse. Nobody earns neglect, period. Okay? You did not deserve to be codependent. You didn't earn it. It was just your brain keeping you alive so you could get to this moment so you could heal. Okay? And you could not prevent their behavior. There's nothing you could have done differently, because they always move the goalposts on you. They're always changing that outcome, aren't they? It's like, oh, yeah, well, this wasn't enough. Or when it was enough, the next day it's not. That was my experience. It was just never consistent. Talking about crazy making. You never knew exactly if it was going to be enough, ever. It's like, geez, it was really, really hard. And I bet you know that, because you're either in it or you're ready to escape from it. So this is something I want you to understand here. So instead, your brilliance, your powerful brain helped you survive the neglect and starvation you were enduring because of their dysfunction. All of this is a result of their dysfunction, not because of your needs, your wants, your feelings. Your wants, needs, feelings, your personality, who you are, the brilliant and powerful being you are, did not cause this. It is innocent. All of this is a result of them being unable or unwilling to do their part and grow up. It's their dysfunction. You've internalized it as yours because the fawn response says, yep, I need to fix them so that they'll keep me so I don't get discarded so I can survive. Now we can start ending that because you're in a better situation. You're in a place where, if you're watching this, you're looking for that answer. You're looking for the way out. I have the way out. I'm going to show you what that is here. Okay. Now, truth number 4, you can be happy again, or even for the first time. I legitimately have clients who did not know what happiness was until they went through their own healing experience. Or they went through the 4 steps I'm going to talk to you about and show you. I'm going to give you here in just a moment. It's a big deal. But you can have this. I'm going to show you how. Okay? All you need is the right steps with the right tools to reprogram your brain and your emotional associations. That's it. You don't have to do all these big complex things. There is a very simple, structured 4-step process that makes this happen. You ready for that? You want to learn about what this is? So can I show you what this is? So I'm going to show you in detail what I have done and what over 400 clients of mine have done that results in a real experience of consistent love, happiness, and confidence in their lives. Do you want that? Do you want love again, real love again in your life? Do you want your happiness back? Do you want your confidence back? Do you want yourself back? You want your power back? You want your dreams back? I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay. So take out that notebook and I want you to write down these 4 steps as we go through them, because this is how you do it. And I've seen this transform people's lives within weeks. Weeks. Rather than years of therapy, weeks. Okay. All right. Write this down. Step number 1, we've got to restore your true identity. And here's that's essential, because one of those 3 impacts, we lost our identity, right? We discarded it. So we've got to restore connection to our true inner voice. We've got to begin to hear ourselves again. We've got to occupy our body, mind, and emotions. We've got to reconnect back to here. We've got to honor our standards and our principles. We've got to associate love with ourselves. So now, shame is that emotional association. Well, restoring our true identity actually teaches us how to restore our association with love. So rather than when I think about myself, I feel shame, when I think about myself, I feel love. That's where we're going. That's what we need to do there. We need to honor and observe our thoughts, feelings, and opinions. We need to respect them, because these things matter. They're part of who we are. They're part of our experience. And they help us know ourselves versus someone else. So it gets us out of that mimicking, absorbing habit we have with codependency. We start to differentiate or individualize ourselves from them. We also need to prioritize our needs and wants in healthy ways that get them met and promotes the fulfillment of other people's wants and needs too, especially in healthy, cooperative, open, and direct ways, rather than passive aggressiveness or control or guilting or shaming, that kind of thing. And we also need to retain, honor, and nurture our awareness of our worth and our value. We need to retrieve our value from other people back to ourselves. We need to take back our value and keep it sacred. Rather than measuring it and judging it and trying to determine it, instead we begin to assume its primacy. We are valuable, period. We don't give it to somebody else. We don't seek it from ourselves. We respect and reside in it. That's what we need to do in order to restore our true identity, reconnect with ourselves. So that's step 1. Now here comes step 2. We need to restore healthy connection. So remember, the impact of that fawn response to the threat of being discarded, it distorts connection so that we can try to control the other person to maintain that sense of love and connection. That's where we get some of those breadcrumbs of love, right? We get some love, we get some attention, some affection. It's better than none, but most of the time it's pretty toxic and it's not very clean. It's not very healthy for us. So step 2, we've got to restore healthy connection. We've got to learn how to honor our beingness and its value and its brilliance. We've got to exchange control for understanding and connection. We've got to become vulnerable again, but vulnerable in the right way. We've got to learn how to trust in the right way with the right people. Not everybody deserves our vulnerability. Not everybody deserves our trust. Not everybody deserves our empathy. Okay, these are gifts we allow people to have. They are not something someone is entitled to. We allow our vulnerability to work for us. Vulnerability, in the way I approach it and I teach you, actually filters people out of your life. And it filters in people who really love and respect you. It's a really powerful tool there. And then we embrace being seen, heard, and valued. We speak up. We demonstrate who we are at all times. We're committed to being ourselves and being seen that way. That results in people, places, and things choosing us, and us choosing people, places, and things that really fit us, that love us, that like us for who we are. We need to nurture deep inner presence. So we're anchored in our body, anchored in our awareness of us, so we can hear our voice, hear what we want, know what our boundaries are, and say yes and no to things that matter to us. We need to foster connection and presence with others and ourselves. This ends that internalized loneliness, that emptiness, that ache within us. This ends it. Restoring healthy connection, we get back in connection with ourselves. We're no longer aching. We're having our needs met. We're being seen. We're being loved. We're being cherished for who we are. That's what happens there. We trust deliberately and we honor love. Love is not a reason to keep somebody, but it is a reason to explore and understand who they are and who we are with them. And then we advocate for our wants, needs, and our boundaries. So this is what we do in order to restore healthy connection with ourselves and with others, and to heal that internalized loneliness. Okay? That also ends that love addiction. That chemical hit we get with the narc becomes inert. Instead, we start to feel the real warmth of love and the real warmth of being seen and cared for. So step 3, we restore, connect, control of our happiness. This is where we get to share ourselves again, just as we are. We get to play again. We get to love again. We get to flirt again. We get to connect again. We get to indulge in our lives. We get to take that risk that we really want to do. We get to discover again. We get to play again. This is important because that's where happiness is. It's in the playfulness of life. Personally, that's my belief. It's why we exist, is to play. Play responsibly and caringly and empathetically, but also funly, right? All right. And then step 4, we need to bring closure to trauma. We have been through trauma. We have been neglected. We have been harmed. We have been abused in some way. And so to ultimately transcend, to break free and restore our happiness, to reconnect with our happiness, to rediscover it and rediscover love and rediscover our confidence, we need to heal our trauma. We got to get closure on it. So we've got to resolve the deep pain into calm, peace, and indifference. We've got to embrace life beyond trauma, anxiety, and fear, and codependency. We've got to engage in proactive action that's no longer terrifying or paralyzing. Very, very, very important. And we need to restore deep embodiment and connection with your true self. This basically anchors us. It cements us back in who we are so that we never get pulled out of it again. So these are the 4 steps you need to do. You need to restore your true identity. You need to restore healthy connection. You need to restore control of your happiness. And then you need to bring closure to trauma. This is what heals codependency. And they're the 4 steps that I used to heal my codependency. And I've done a lot of work and a lot of research and a lot of trial and error on this. This is what I have discovered. Okay? Now I mentor people just like you in taking back their own happiness, love, and confidence using these 4 steps. Now they consistently get results like, she's anonymized, but she asked, she wanted me to post this. She's like, yes, but keep it anonymous. So results like this anonymous person, right? Look at this. I've highlighted it. Free from emotional response to daily triggers. This life is life-changing and worth every penny. I've had better results with the closure techniques than 21 years of traditional therapy. This is the results these 4 steps create, guys. This is powerful, powerful stuff. And we got Cheryl. She's like, I'm learning that I'm safe. I can be me. I make choices and share my feelings without the sky falling because of these 4 steps. The power of these 4 steps creates these kinds of changes. And Cynthia, his tools work. They're more effective than any therapist I've been to. The reason why they're effective is because they address the core issue from the proper point of view. Remember, codependency is the fawn response. We're responding to the danger of being discarded. When we understand what's going on in the brain and why we're doing what we can do, or why we're doing what we do, rather, then we can create processes and tools that address it appropriately and effectively. And that's what we're doing here, okay? So that is the magic of it. So now, can I show you the 4-step system these people have used, these clients have used to get these results so fast, so effectively? Okay, if you said yes, here we go. So step 1 is the heal training, okay? This is where we restore our identity by using a process called the heal process. It's a simple 3-step journey I guide you through that helps you remap your emotional association with you so that when you think about you, you feel love instead of shame, okay? This helps you discover who you are and take control of who you want to be. So we accomplish that in the heal trainings. And then step 2 is the addiction to connection training. This is where I help you heal the internalized loneliness, the love addiction, the trauma bonding through a practice called the connection practice. This allows you, rather than fearing connection or avoiding it, you get to reconnect back to you and experience real love, real nurture, real safety, real emotional shelter. You get to be nurtured. You get to be cared about. You get to be seen. You don't even have to give yourself up. You don't have to please them. You don't have to fix them. Instead, you get to be you. They get to be them. And that's where your joy comes from. And this is, again, where we heal that internalized loneliness, the love addiction, and the trauma bonding. Okay? And then step 3 in Thrive strategy trainings, I teach you how to take control of your happiness using what's called the 10 laws. These 10 simple laws teach you the skills and how to be happy, how to have intimacy, how to choose and build friendships, how to choose and build real relationships, how to know what your boundaries are, how to communicate those boundaries, how to handle conflict so it creates intimacy, how to know what your goals are, how to pursue them, how to take action, how to have and experience them. That's what I teach you in Thrive Strategy. And then step 4 in the Get Closure Now training, I teach you how to accomplish closure with your trauma. This is how I put those 4 essential steps into action for you. We do this through my 6-step closure technique that I developed in my shamanic training. I've seen profound results with this, both for myself and with others that have gone through all sorts of trauma. We're talking sexual abuse, abandonment, physical abuse, emotional neglect, that kind of thing. This is also where I teach you how to regulate and change or reprogram your default mode network. So rather than you being terrified, you actually get to have peace. Okay? Now, these systems have produced, again, consistent results. We've got Leighton here. He came to me. He was frozen in procrastination. He was living in the basement of his parents. He didn't know what he wanted to do. He was struggling in school. He was struggling in his job, struggling in relationships. And now he has a very fruitful, very beautiful relationship with a beautiful woman. He's in a new job. He's graduated college. He's in his own place. He's got a new car. He's changed his life with those 4 steps I just showed you. And then Amalia, she came to me. She was a sex slave, guys. She was sold into child sex slavery at the age of 13. She lived on the streets after her mother died. She's been through an enormous amount of abuse. So she came to me. We started working with these 4 steps with her, and she's changed her life. She now works in hospice. She helps people die in peace. And she also teaches and trains people on how to tap into their own brilliance, create their own happiness in their lives. And she's experienced really fruitful, fun, and fulfilling relationships with men, something she has never been able to accomplish previous to working through these 4 steps with me. That's powerful. And I got some other results here. We got Jennifer Olson. She's really cool because she came to me and she's like, I'm really struggling with this. So I put her through the 4 steps, and now she's discovering who she is. She's finding that she has the courage to live her life. She's got a solid relationship after years, 2 decades with a narcissist. She's got a solid, healthy relationship in her life. She found real love, guys, real love and real confidence for her. And then we got Jackie over here. She was living in a domestic violence situation. We got her out of that. And now she's in a fruitful, fun, and loving relationship with a man that she loves. And she's doing her thing. She runs her own business. She's building it into success. She's accomplishing a lot. She's very happy, especially with how she's able to parent her kids. It was a major, major factor for her. So she's been able to show up for them in healthy ways and create a new life for herself after being stuck with an abusive narcissistic individual for over 10 years with those 4 steps. Okay. So do you want these results for yourself, guys? Do you want to accomplish this for you? That's the question you need to answer here, because it's a yes or a no. It's not whether you trust me. It's not anything else. It's yes. Do you want these results? If so, I've got an opportunity for you, okay? I took these 4 steps and I have created them into 2 specific trainings. Training number 1 is called Codependency Confidence. This is where we address steps 1 through 3. This is where we're addressing we're healing our identity, right? We're restoring and healing our connection, and we're taking control of our happiness. We're doing that in Codependency Confidence. And then step 4, this is where we get closure in our trauma. So step 1 through 3 actually work through a self-guided live Q&A process. So you do the coursework, and every week we meet and we talk about how you're doing. And we do this in a group setting. And so you can get answers to your questions, answers to the challenges you're facing, and then kick some butt. And then with step 4, it's actually a 6-week live training with one-on-one session with a practitioner. This allows you to get that closure on your trauma, okay? And it has to be facilitated in a live 6-week session so that we can determine when you're ready to go through that process so that we make sure it's effective for you, okay? So this is how I help people accomplish that with these 2 trainings, okay? So training 1 involves steps 1 through 3. This is where we go through heal. This is where we restore our true identity. Step 2 is where we go through addiction to connection. This is where we restore connection with ourselves and others. It's also where we heal that emptiness, that loneliness, and that trauma bonding, that love addiction. Then we go through step 3 with Thrive Strategy, and this is where we take control of our happiness, where I teach you the skills that make life work so that you get happiness as a natural result. Now, typically with this training course, you're going to spend there's 1 training a week. You'll spend 20 to 60 minutes in practices 3 times a week. It's very, very simple. The class takes usually about an hour, and then you're going to have some homework, which are those practices that take between 20 and 60 minutes. You do them 3 to 5 times a week, you're going to see major results. And there are different modes you can put this particular training into so they can fit your life. Like if you're really busy, one of the modes is passive mode, where you just listen to it in the background. If you have a real dedication to it, then you can do it with what's called focus mode, and you go out there and you just do it according to the original outline. So this is all self-paced, it's all self-governed, so it can fit in your life right now. And then training number 2 is all about step 4. It's all about healing that trauma, okay? It's a 6-week live training. It includes one-on-one session with a practitioner. It might be me or it might be one of my apprentices that are being trained in the closure technique. And this is also where I teach you how to master calm. So you can, so anxiety and panic, flashbacks don't control you anymore. Instead, you are being nurtured back into you. And I help you adjust your mindset so that your mind is feeding you appropriate, positive, and loving thoughts rather than terrorizing you with things you don't want to think about or scary things that could happen. This takes place over 6 weeks. It's 1 training a week, lasts about an hour, and then 5-minute practices once a day. 1 practice takes 5 minutes once a day. I teach you how to do this. The reason we teach it live is because it helps me assess your readiness for closure. That's why it's not automated, because we want to make sure you're ready to go through that process before we do it, and so you can get the results. But that's why, okay? Okay, so how we do the trainings. There's 1 training a week. It's either live or recorded, depending on which part of the course you're in. And it's online, so you can phone in. You can watch it on your phone, your smartphone, or your PC or your Mac. You can download it to them and listen to the audios. So I provide you the videos, I provide you the audios, and then there's PDFs that can come with it. There's typically 1 practice to do each day for 3 to 5 days. That practice typically is either between 20 or 60 minutes, depending on what part of the trainings you're in. Now there's live Q&A every week, okay? You get to interact with me. I show up, I answer your questions, I give you tips on how to deal with situations or how to maximize, the course for you, or answer your questions so you get the most out of it. There aren't any other systems out here that do this. So every week you can show up and get real live mentorship from me for your situation. Take advantage of that, okay? And then there's daily emails as reminders. You don't have to do the thing every single day because, again, like I referenced earlier, there's 4 different ways to run this program. So the trainings are configured to be tailored to your life. You can adapt them to it. But then the emails do show up every day to remind you that that's going on so you can do it, okay? Now, with these 4 steps, with this program, I get some very specific questions, okay? The first one is, are you even qualified, Marshall, to teach this? And yes, I am. I trained as a shamanic healer for 2 years, and then I trained in codependency and relationship healing for another 2 years. I'm also a survivor myself. I've overcome these things for myself. So not only am I trained in it, but I understand the territory because I've had to go through it myself. I've walked the desert of neglect. I have climbed the mountain of shame. I have built my own confidence. I have healed trauma. I have been through it. So I understand it at a visceral, real life level. Like if I told you, if I said, you know the taste of chocolate, You only know it tastes of chocolate because you've had chocolate, right? So we have a commonality there. We can describe that. It's the same thing with this. I know what it's like because I've been there. I've done it. I've been doing this for over 11 years now. So I got a lot of experience, a lot of hours behind me. I've worked with over 400 individuals. That's a big deal. Or 92% of them have accomplished these, accomplished happiness, love, and confidence again. And the 8% that didn't, only for one reason. They didn't do the work, okay? Do the work, get the results. Seriously. Now, I have ongoing training, always be ongoing. I'm training in the Sedona method. I'm ongoing training with a system called Access Consciousness, EFT, somatic processing, things like that. Fundamentally and finally, the thing that really qualifies me to teach are the results I get. And I showed you some of those results. Some very, very powerful changes people experience because these systems, these processes work. Now, here's another what if that people typically give me. What if I get lost in it all? What if it's too much? What if I overwhelm myself? Well, that's why I offer weekly live Q&A, because I can tell you how to use the course for your situation. You can get guidance for your circumstance and situation. You can learn from other students in their growth. You can also build friendship, connection, and accountability that way. And you don't get overwhelmed. You start getting the results you want and the results you deserve. Now, there's a third what if that tends to come up. What if it doesn't work, Marshall? I'm doing all these things. What if it doesn't work? Well, I do have a 92% success rate. The 8% that don't succeed is dominantly because they don't do the work. Now, it's possible they have an undiagnosed mental illness that's interfering. That is about 2% of that 8%. Okay, that does show up, so we want to be mindful of that. But if you do get stuck, things aren't working for me, myself or one of my apprentices will work with you to help you break through when you're stuck. I want you to succeed. That is what matters to me most, is that you actually experience the reality that you can have your happiness back, that you have your confidence back, you have love back, okay? And then to get this guarantee to work for you, you've got to reach out within the first 2 weeks of enrollment so we can help you. So if you reach out to me in the first week and things aren't working, then I'll refund your money. If you purchased a non-subscription option, like if you purchased the whole thing forever, then if you went with that route, and I'll show you those in a moment. If you went with that, then I'll show you how, then I'll refund your money if it doesn't work. But if you don't do that within the first 2 weeks, I'm not going to refund your money, but I will continue to work with you to make sure it succeeds for you, because that's what I want. And that's what you deserve, and that's what you can have. All right. So let's talk again about the results of our clients here. We've got the anonymous one, 20 years of therapy. Saw results within 4 weeks using those 4 steps. She got clarity. She got freedom from craving the narcissist, from the person she was addicted to. She got freedom from the guilt, choosing herself first. She got more love of self. She got peace of mind and body. Her body relaxed. She can actually sleep. I've got Sonia. She's a professional in coaching. She's a peer coach. Works in the same kind of arena I do. She was dealing with some codependency and identity struggles. We found deep clarity and relief within 6 weeks. We healed that stuff for her. She's expanded her business revenue. She's expanded her business reach and purpose. She has a deeper relationship with her significant other, and she sees her worth and value and feels it. So that's Sonia's experience there. And we got Michael's experience again. She's dealt with love, addiction, and trauma, found relief from craving the narc, found new love and connection in his life, more peace, more grounded, feeling natural confidence and rest in who he is. Then we have Ginger. She broke free from love addiction and trauma bonding. She found self-respect and self-love. She's discovering new relationships and new friendships and more clarity about her desires. And we got Connie. This is where she ended her shame identity, her experiences, her real value. She lives from her own sense of self-worth. She's no longer lost in other people's approval. She's healed deep neglect and abuse, and she's happier. She's got her new car, she's got her new house, and she's got real friendships in her life. Do you want these results? Are these what you want to have in your life? So I'm going to show you how to get them now if this is what you're looking for, okay? So you have 3 options. You can see below now that they're available to you. Option number 1, you can get it all now. So this gets you codependence to confidence. This gets you closure, the Get Closure Now course. Okay, so you get all 4 steps, reserves your seat in my 6-week live training in healing the trauma. It includes that live weekly Q&A. It includes that one-on-one closure session. It includes lifetime access to trainings and updates to the system because I refresh them once a year. And it includes 3 secret bonuses. You're going to want these bonuses. This is $1,500 up front, or $349 for 3 or for 5 months. So that's how you can get option number 1. Option number 2, you get steps 1 through 3 forever, and you get a special discount on your future enrollment and Get Closure Now. This also includes the weekly live Q&A. It includes lifetime access to trainings and updates, and it includes those 3 secret bonuses. It's only $500. Lifetime, forever. Okay? That means you can come back to it in 2 years. It'll be there and you can do your thing. This is important. And then option number 3, monthly subscription. So sometimes money is really tight, isn't it? So you can get access to steps 1 through 3 now. You can enroll in my 6-week healing, the Get Closure Now, at a later date at full price. And then this includes still that weekly live Q&A. So you don't lose this. You also get monthly access to the trainings and updates, and you get access to those 3 secret bonuses for $49 a month. That gets you in. You can start healing for less than a copay, guys. Less than a copay, and you get results that actually work for you. Now, I'm a big fan of this. There is the scholarship option. So if you're sweating bullets, you're like, man, I really want in. I want in on this. Don't sweat the bullets over the price, okay? You may qualify for a scholarship. So what you need to do is click the link below that says scholarship, fill that out, and let me know. We'll get back to you within 24, 48 hours about the price for you, okay? Because the price can literally go from 0 up to $250 depending on what you're requesting. Request exactly what you want. I don't care if you feel guilty about it. If you want it, request it, and let's see what we can do for you, okay? All right, so here's some important details about how things work. We've got that flex pacing. You can go at your pace in these courses. Like Michael, for instance, he's taking it slow. He's been at it for 6 months. He's got the lifetime membership. It's working for him. Take your time. You have online access via phone, PC, and Mac. You have it complements therapy very well because it's rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy approaches, as well as mindfulness meditation. There is a 14-day refund on lifetime purchases. There are no refunds on subscriptions, but you must reach out to me in that 14-day period, and we need to see why it's not working for you and try to work that out. And if it doesn't work, that's when I'll refund that money to you. And then there's an offline option available for lifetime purchases for USB. You can request that. We can get that to you. It's $30, okay? All right. So now there's 2 temptations that typically come up when we're looking at these things, you know? Because if you're still here, you really want this, but your brain might be giving you 2 things that tend to sabotage your joy. Number 1, self-help. I'll just figure this out myself. I'll go read all the books. I'll go do all the YouTube videos, and I'll do this myself, Marshall. You've given me the 4 steps. I'll figure it out. You might figure it out. You might create your own tool sets, your own processes, your own journey there. But you're going to spend, I spent 10 years doing that. 10 years. I would gladly pay $500 for somebody to lead me through this process now than spend the, what was it, $80,000 something I lost in trying to figure this out, both with losing a marriage, losing a job, losing my car, the dream car I had, losing my house, losing a business. Yeah, not worth it. Not worth it. So temptation number 1, you can self-help yourself. Don't get caught in that loop. There's a reason why you've read a billion different self-help books, and while yes, you got awareness, and yes, it helped you understand, you still haven't healed. It's because understanding and analysis don't equal healing. You need the right processes to go in and transmute that shame into love. You need the right processes to reconnect with yourself and others. You need the right tools and skills to retake control of your happiness. And you need to relieve that trauma. You need to get closure there. You need the right process for that. Okay? And that's what I provide for you in Codependency, Confidence, and Get Closure Now. And these packages I'm offering you. Now, temptation number 2 is to doubt it and do nothing. Okay. A lot of times people are like, well, I'm already in therapy. I'll keep doing that. Therapy is useful, but therapy typically doesn't produce healing like what my clients see. Right? Two of them have been in therapy for over 20 years. And they got more results out of my system within weeks and months than they did in those 20 years. Think about the amount of money, time, and energy you invested in your therapy only to come here and watch this and go, yeah, don't doubt it. Take a risk. Jump in. Stop hoping things will change without making any different action. They're going to stay the same because action perpetuates the same outcome. Change the action, get a different outcome, okay? That means you're going to continue to suffer, spin, and feel lost unless you take a different action. I have the solution you're looking for. This was made specifically for you. If you deal with that codependency, that shame, that love addiction, that emptiness, you lose yourself in relationships, this was made for you. I built it specifically for you, okay? So that's the second temptation. Don't fall into it. Instead, join now and rediscover for yourself happiness, love, and confidence. Take it back. It's in you. Okay, we can do that through option number 1. You can get it all now for $1,500 or for 5 payments of $349. Option number 2, you can just get steps 1 through 3 forever, which is Codependency, Confidence, for $497. And you'll get a special discount on the live, on getting enrolled in Get Closure Now. Again, it's really affordable. It's right there for you. You can do this. Or if money's really tight and you want to make this happen, you're committed to changing, then you can sign up for the monthly subscription for $49 a month. Boom. Now, again, if money is an issue and you're like, man, Marshall, I make 25 grand a year. I have one lady, she reached out to me and she says, I make $25,000 a year. What can you do for me? I said, let's get you in. I got her into the whole thing for a price that it blew her mind. I had another client, she reached out to me, she makes 12 grand a year. I said, yep, we'll get you in for this price. One reached out to me, she's a college student. She doesn't make anything. We got her into it. Reach out to me. Let me know your situation. Take a risk. But what I do ask is that you're committed to changing your life. That's all. Okay? So down below are the purchase links. Choose the one that makes sense to you. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the courses, in the trainings, and online. I appreciate your time. And remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And I'll see you guys online.